What's up, everyone? And with all the injuries taking place in week 2, here are my top week 3 waiver wire pickups coming right up. What's up, everyone, and welcome to the Gridiron Fantasy Football Podcast. Today is Tuesday, September 22nd, 2020. And of course, I am Chip. I'm your host, and thank you so much for listening today. If you're a new listener, thank you so much for joining us as well. If you'd like to share our podcast, you can find us over on Apple and Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and now we're on Amazon Music. So that's super exciting to be on another source for podcasts. So super exciting news there. And then also, if you'd like to watch us, you can watch us over on YouTube at Gridiron Fantasy Football. So just please don't forget to hit subscribe to support the show, and so you don't miss any more episodes that I drop on a weekly basis. Today we're going to be talking the waiver wire pickups for week 3. But first, let's talk about that Monday night game. What a crazy game. Generally when you look at a matchup like the Raiders versus the Saints, it was a home opener for the Las Vegas Raiders, and you see this match on paper, and the game looks lopsided. You don't think the Raiders can be able to hold up against the Saints, but the Saints just had a bad game. The Saints didn't look good at all, other than a few pieces here and there. But the Raiders were able to win, surprisingly, 34-24. A good credit to them. They had a good game plan. They played good on defense. Didn't allow Drew Brees to do anything. And then the Raiders, all they did was give it to Darren Waller. You might as well call him the Las Vegas Wallers, last night, because all they did was feed him the ball. He had a massive game. He had 12 receptions off of 16 targets for 103 yards and a touchdown. The Saints had no answer for him. They were able to do anything they wanted against the Saints defense. When because the Raiders are a run-heavy offense and they have Darren Waller. So when you can't stop you can't stop the rushing and you can't stop Darren Waller, it's gonna be hard to win. But it's one of those things where it added, Derek Carr had a very good game. He had 282 yards and 3 touchdowns passing. Now, Josh Jacobs didn't have the fantasy production that we're hoping for last night, but he still ran the ball hard. He had a lot of runs where he was just dragging the defensive line. He had 27 carries for 88 yards, but he had 3.3 yards per carry. On the Saints, side of the ball, Alvin Kamara had a massive game. It was kind of one of those things where you expected it because Michael Thomas is out for a few weeks with a high ankle sprain. And, Alvin Kamara had 174 total yards. He had 9 receptions and 2 touchdowns. So that was good for 38.4 PPR points. So very good game for Alvin Kamara. He's having a great season so far. He has 4 touchdowns now in the first 2 games, which he only had 6 of all of last season. So, a great sign for things to come for Alvin Kamara. My only concern about Alvin Kamara is that the fact that they don't have Michael Thomas. Emmanuel Sanders didn't have a catch until the last minute of the football game last night. Traquan Smith didn't do much. Jared Cook did have a touchdown, but just didn't look good for Drew Brees. Drew Brees is starting to look his age, and it's one of those things where he continues to struggle. Right now he is second on the list of fewest pass length per the first 2 games, so he's only averaging 4.82 yards per attempt. So just not good for Drew Brees. But that's why Alvin Kamara is so good, is because Alvin Kamara is the guy he checks down to. So, if you have Alvin Kamara, definitely a plus for you. But I'm just worried that if he continues to get worked like he is, that he may not be able to hold up. So hopefully Michael Thomas can come back pretty soon. But I don't know if you guys listened to the podcast I dropped on Monday, but I was up in my main league. I was up by 65 points going into the Sunday night football game, and my opponent, he had Aaron Jones, so Aaron Jones had a massive game. But then he played Russell Wilson and he played Chris Carson, and I'm thinking, I got 65-point lead. I think I should be good because I had Alvin Kamara going on Monday night, and then he had Drew Brees, so he was able to just get to the point where he was 1 point. I think he was just behind by 1 point. And I went from 80% chance to win down to I was now only had 48% percent chance to win. And Alvin Kamara, he showed up, and I was able to win. I won by 20 points. Drew Brees did nothing, and really exciting game for me from a fantasy standpoint. When I don't so my 2 things in fantasy football, I like losing by a lot or I like winning by a lot. I don't like close games. They stress me out, and I know it's just fantasy, but like I'm super competitive and I hate losing, and I just hated having such a massive game this past week, and then I would become the one who lost to the guy who scored the first most points of the week. So didn't happen though. I was the one who led the whole week in points, but still, it's just one of those things where I hate having games like that because it definitely can get stressful. So now let's go on into some of the news. So massive weekend for injuries. It's one of those things where it sucks because a lot of big names have been out for the season. Obviously, the biggest news is Saquon Barkley's out for the rest of the year for the torn ACL. You have Cortland Sutton, who's out for the rest of the season with the torn ACL. Then you have Christian McCaffrey. He's out 4 to 6 weeks with a high ankle sprain. You got Jimmy G, who's week to week. Raheem Mostert is going to be week to week. Tevin Coleman's going to be week to week. I mean, a lot of guys that just unfortunately got injured. And there's some commonality to this that the San Francisco 49ers are asking NFL officials to look at the Jets' field conditions because they think the field conditions was a big contributor to the injuries. And I don't know if you guys had paid attention to what's going on with the 49ers, but they decided that when they went from San Francisco to New York, they decided that once they were done playing the Jets, they were going to go down to West Virginia and practice for the week and then go back because they have to go play the Giants in week 3. So like they want to make sure they're getting the field checked out so they don't have to worry about any more injuries. But just a massive blow to a lot of fantasy teams. And I think it becomes this season, it's going to be the ones who have the healthiest rosters because right now their stars just dropping like flies. And hopefully it will be something that it won't be that harmful to your roster. Hopefully you're the one who has the luck that doesn't get anybody who's injured. But, that's why you have the handcuffs. That's why you have to draft, as much depth as possible because there's going to be another big name that goes out, just a matter of when. So with that, let's go into the top waiver wires for week 3. I start off, with my quarterbacks, and I mentioned him this last week's my first guy you should try to pick up, and that's Gardner Minshew of the Jacksonville Jaguars. He's had a pretty decent season so far in the first 2 weeks. He's been a fringe QB1, and the thing is, he has a favorable matchups going forward. He has one of the easiest straight of schedules for the rest of the season. So the next 2 games, he gets the Dolphins, and then he gets the Cincinnati Bengals. So definitely 2 weeks in a row where he can be a legitimate streamer or at least a starter for you because I play him, and I have a 2 quarterback league that I'm in, and I play him every week because I think he's the best option. And so far, it's been working out for me. But I think that Gardner Minshew, if he's available, even if you're in a 1 quarterback league, like I said, he's a guy that you can stream, especially this week against the Dolphins. So a guy that I would see, if he's on your waiver wire and try to pick him up. And then the next 2 guys I'm going to talk about, this only really pertains to like 2 quarterback leagues because obviously you're playing 2 quarterbacks, or if you're in a super flex league, these are the quarterbacks that you could try to pick up based on that. And the first guy is Joe Burrow. You want to check if he's available. He's probably not if you're in if you're playing in a super flex league or in a 2 quarterback league. But he's having a decent season so far. I mean, he's coming out and he's playing like a first round pick. He's definitely looking really good. He plays the Eagles in week 3, so that's not a matchup that I'm too worried about. I know for me, like I have to play him in a 2 quarterback league. My 2 quarterbacks are Big Ben and Joe Burrow, so I feel comfortable playing him because those are my 2 best options. Because my backup is Sam Darnold, so I'm gonna be riding with Joe Burrow the whole season. So I think he's definitely a good player to look at, see if he's available. And then the last guy is Justin Herbert of the Los Angeles Chargers. So if you don't know what happened on Sunday, is that Tyrod Taylor injured his chest. In pregame warmups that caused him to go to the hospital after the game. It looks like Taylor is going to he could miss some time. He's determined week to week, but the Chargers head coach had said that if Taylor is healthy, he's going to play. But if you're a guy who's rostering Tyrod Taylor and now you need somebody to fill in, Justin Herbert's going to be a good option. I mean, about what he did on Sunday was pretty remarkable based on the sense that he had no idea that he was going to start. He ended up having 311 passing yards. He had a rushing touchdown and a passing touchdown. Now, he did that against the Chiefs defense, and the Chiefs defense is not an awful defense. So I think that is definitely a good indication that Justin Herbert can be a good fill-in, could be a flex play, depends on your league, like a super flex, but just somebody just to think about. Not saying you have to go to the waiver wire and pick him up, but just a name that you want to see floating around just in case you are somebody who needs a quarterback who, if you had like Jimmy G or someone else who went down, he may be a person you can add to your roster. Now, going on to the running back position, there's a bunch of names here that I just want to, state, because it's one of those things where we have so many injuries. So the first one, obviously, with Saquon Barkley being out for the rest of the season with the torn ACL, everyone's going to rush to Dion Lewis. Dion Lewis is a guy that obviously he handled the rest of the workload when Saquon Barkley went out. But Dion Lewis is not a workhorse running back. He's a guy who's a third down back. He's a guy who's a change of pace back, and he's not a guy who's going to be able to take the blunt of the carries. You're not going to see him getting 20 carries per game. So I think Dion Lewis is worth a pickup. But the name that I think that should be recognized is Wayne Gallman. Now, Wayne Gallman did not play on Sunday because he was a healthy scratch. But now that Barkley is injured, Gallman now becomes activated, and I think that he's a guy that can carry the load. I can't remember where I saw this tweet, but even in the before the season started, it said that if Barkley ends up missing any type of games for a lengthened amount of time, that Gallman would be the guy who would carry the load. So that's with Dion Lewis already being on the roster. So I think that people are going to go after Dion Lewis and spend a lot of their fab on Dion Lewis. But I think the smart move is probably to grab Wayne Gallman, because he's going to be the guy who probably gets the majority of the carries. But also, you got to think about Devontae Freeman, because Devontae Freeman probably is on your waiver wire. He's probably going to be free. Now, if you are in a savvy league, Freeman's probably already picked up by somebody. I know in my main league, he's already picked up, but he could be a guy that gets picked up by the Giants as well. So with that being the case, you're thinking about Dion Lewis, Wayne Gallman, and Devontae Freeman possibilities. That's a backfield that I don't want to touch. I don't think he's worth, spend a bunch of fab money on. So if I were you, I would just kind of see who wants to overspend for something like Dion Lewis, especially if you see a guy like who's the Barkley owner. If you are the Barkley owner, I can understand why you need to do it, but I think that you just kind of want to wait and see what happens with just the carries and the rush attempts based on between Lewis and Gallman. And then the second running back on my list is Mike Davis. Christian McCaffrey for the Panthers is out for 4 to 6 weeks with a high ankle sprain. So obviously Mike Davis is a guy that you want to target. He had a decent game filling in for Christian McCaffrey. The downside to Mike Davis, he's not going to have the same production. He's not going to get the same amount of attempts, receptions and rush attempts as Christian McCaffrey. So that's the only thing concerning. He's a good guy that you can probably put in your flex, but especially if you're in a PPR format. But Mike Davis is a guy that's a second on my list on who to pick up. And then, James Robinson, the Jacksonville Jaguars, he's a guy that, if you're savvy as well, you already had him on your roster before the season started. Once Fournette got released, James Robinson was the guy that people were talking about. If you're able to get him on your roster, you probably got him for free, and you're holding on to the rest of the year, because this is a guy that's going to be the workhorse back for the Jags. So if he's available, I will snag him. He will be if it was between Dion Lewis, Mike Davis, and James Robinson, I'm taking James Robinson first. And then going to the next guy is Darrell Henderson. Darrell Henderson had 12, he rushed 12 times for 81 yards, and he had 40 additional yards receiving on Sunday. He was the guy who led the Rams backfield. But the problem is that obviously Malcolm Brown was the guy who led the Rams backfield in week 1. So this is a backfield that we're not going to know who's going to be the number one back. And then news came out that Cam Akers is dealing with like a cartilage issue in his ribs. So he's going to be considered day-to-day. So there's still a possibility that Cam Akers doesn't miss a lot of time. So Darrell Henderson is a guy that you could add for some depth, but it's going to be a crapshoot on who you think is going to start for the Rams and who's going to be the lead back. So even though that Darrell Henderson had 12 rush attempts, Malcolm Brown still had 11. It was just obviously Henderson was more effective, but just a backfield that I just don't know if I want to spend a lot of fab money on Darrell Henderson. And then going into Miami, I think Myles Gaskin is a very interesting option to pick up. He's going to be a guy that probably nobody's going to have on their radar. Somebody that you can probably get for a low amount of fab. And then, he continues to be the lead back for the Miami Dolphins. He continues to get the most rush attempts. He had, on Sunday, he had 6 receptions for 36 yards. And an interesting fact is that Myles Gaskin he's second in the league for the running back position with 10 or more receptions. Alvin Kamara is number 1, and Myles Gaskin is number 2. So he's definitely being implemented in the offense. And I know there's a lot of talk in the Dolphins camp saying that he's not meant to be the lead back. He's a guy who's changed the pace. But He's leading in rush attempts. He's leading in targets. So Myles Gaskin is a guy that I'm going to try to grab and try to add to my roster. And then another big name, the reason why this guy's last on my list is only because he's probably got drafted in your league, and that's Jerick McKinnon. I know in my league he was drafted, and he's probably not there for you on your waiver wire, but it's a good opportunity for you to go and check, see if he's there. If he's there, he's definitely my number one guy to pick up, only because he is in a run-heavy offense. Now, the only thing about this is Raheem Mostert is going to miss a few weeks. He could come back at any time. Tevin Coleman is going to miss some time as well. So at least for the next few weeks, Jerick McKinnon seems to be a safe bet that you can start. He did very well filling in for Raheem Mostert. So I think he's a guy that you can pick up. And if he's out there available in your league, he's the top priority for me in any format. So go on to the wide receivers. I have Diontae Johnson on my list. He just had another big game. He continues to lead the Steelers with a target share. He has a 32% target share right now. He is leading the Steelers by a huge margin. And, he may not be available, but it's one of those things that you just want to go check, because sometimes guys drop players for hot free agents, and Diontae Johnson could be just sitting there. So if he's there, I don't think he's going to maintain the 32% target share, only because Juju's there. You have Eric Ebron. And you have Chase Claypool, stuff like that. So I don't think that he's going to maintain that. But if he does maintain that, he's going to be a wide receiver 1 this year. So a guy that you can pick up, hopefully for free on your waiver wire. If not, don't spend too much. But I think he's a guy that you should definitely check to see if he's available. And then Atlanta Falcons wide receiver Russell Gage. He continues to be a factor in the offense. He's second on the team with 22.8% target share. He's just behind Calvin Ridley. He may not be able to withstand that and all that, but, because Julio Jones is obviously still there. But I have a feeling there's something going on with Julio Jones that seems to be just kind of undermined. I don't think that he's completely healthy. I think it's shown based on what's going on with the target share and just the fact that he, just doesn't look the same. But Russell Gage is a guy that was on the list last week. People probably didn't pick him up, but if he's there, I would pick him up. And then last week, Paris Campbell was one of the big names that got picked up last week in the free agent, in free agency last week, and then he went down this week with a sprained PCL, so he's gonna miss some time. So then now Michael Pittman Jr. tends to be the guy that's gonna get hopefully his up in targets. So with T.Y. Hilton there, obviously you got Alie-Cox now there. Now with Michael Pittman, I think he's a decent add, a guy you can stash on your bench and kind of wait and see. Just because we just don't know exactly what he's going to do with more targets and more playing time. Hopefully he has one of those breakout games where if he's on your bench and he has a breakout game, that's good for you, because then you can use them and start in your flex or whatnot. But and this guy here, he's probably, the next guy I'm going to talk about, he's probably not available for you, but check and see is CeeDee Lamb. He was probably drafted in your league, but he continues to look great. He's just dominating right now. He has 11 receptions for 165 yards right now for the season, and he has 15 targets on the season. I know that doesn't seem like a lot, but he's a guy that they continue to contribute in the receiving game. The main thing for him is that he plays 91% of his snaps in the slot. So this is a guy who's a perimeter receiver, but because they already got Gallup, they already got Cooper, CeeDee Lamb I think is going to just continue to feast this season, because he'll be a mismatch in the slot all year long. I mean, it shows that he's 9%. He plays 91% of his snaps in the slot. So, I honestly think from a talent standpoint, he's the best, wide receiver on the Dallas Cowboys. I know that seems like a hot take, but I just think from a talent, I was watching that game, and the dude looks amazing. I think that they got a real good player in CeeDee Lamb, and I think you should roster him. I think if Diontae Johnson's not available, I think CeeDee Lamb's the next guy that you should be able to pick. So with that, going on to the tight end position, the first tight end on my list is Alie-Cox. I mentioned on the Monday's podcast that, Philip Rivers loves throwing to the tight end position, and it showed, because Alie-Cox had 5 receptions for 111 yards off of 6 targets, and and he played the Vikings, which is obviously a tight end. They're not very good against the tight end. And then, this week he gets the Jets. He gets the team that just gave up 2 touchdowns to Jordan Reed. So I think that Alie-Cox, if he's available, he's a good stash or a good streamer this week, because he definitely has that plus matchup. And the next tight end on my list is Mike Gesicki. the Miami Dolphins. I mean, right now he's having a great season. On Sunday he caught 8 of 11 targets for 129 yards and a touchdown. He had a sick one-handed grab. If you haven't seen the grab, go on YouTube or go somewhere to watch the replay. He had a great catch. It'll make OBJ proud. I mean, just one of those great catches in the game. Through the first 2 weeks of the Miami Dolphins season, he's lined up in the slot 79% of the time. So Chan Gainley is the offensive coordinator for the Miami Dolphins, and he's known to use the tight end in the slot. And it continues to show that Gesicki is going to be a very productive person in this offense. He has led the Dolphins with 22% of the target share. So I think he's a guy that you can put on your roster. You can play him this week. You can, see what happens. Even if you don't need a tight end, he's a good guy to have on your roster, because when you do free agency, it's not all about what you get onto your roster. It's who you keep from other people's rosters. So depending on your depth on your roster, I know some people don't have a lot of depth in their bench, so they might have only 5 roster spots to put on their bench, but I think he's a guy that you should at least roster if you have the space to do so. And then another tight end who had a very good game on Sunday was Jonnu Smith of the Tennessee Titans. He's caught 4 or 5 targets for 84 yards and 2 touchdowns. He just looked like an athletic freak out there on Sunday. And honestly, he's a guy that I felt like he would have a good season. Obviously, that's showing more because we have A.J. Brown that's out. So I think a lot of it, too, is A.J. Brown being out. So some of the targets obviously have to go somewhere else. But what's interesting the fact is that Adam Humphries, Corey Davis, and Jonnu Smith all have the same 19% target share for the Tennessee Titans. So they're all getting Ryan Tannehill is distributing the ball evenly amongst those 3. I think Jonnu Smith continues to emerge as a tight end 1. I think this week he plays the Vikings, who gave up a big game to Alie-Cox, and I think that's going to be a guy that you can play and stream this week. And then for my last tight end for my waiver wires is Dalton Schultz. He's a guy that he plays for the Dallas Cowboys. He was there this week because Blake Jarwin went down with the injury. And I know this is a guy that I'm not going to run to the waiver wire for. He's just a guy that you want to just kind of have that name. I just want to plant that name out there because he did have a decent game on Sunday. He did have 10 targets. He led the Cowboys with 10 targets. And then he did have a good showing when he had 9 receptions for 88 yards and a touchdown. So the problem is this week, the reason why I wouldn't grab him, that he may be a stash in deeper leagues because they play the Seahawks. And if they're playing the Seahawks, he's most likely going against Jamal Adams. Will probably shut him down. So I think that this week he may have a pedestrian type game, but just a name that you should have on your radar just in case you need tight end help. So those are my waiver wire pickups for week 3. Some of these guys may not be available in your leagues, but it's good to check just in case someone did drop these guys. But these are names that could very well help you win a fantasy championship. It's only week 2, so be careful how much fab you use because you want to blow your whole fab budget on one player because we saw what happened last week. Nyheim Hines was one of the number 1 ads. Benny Snell was one of the number 1 ads. Then you had, Malcolm Brown was one of the main ads. They both did nothing. All 3 of those guys did nothing this week. You had Paris Campbell. He went down with the injury. So that's why it's very careful to just blow your whole budget in the first couple of weeks because you don't know what's going to happen. There could be bigger injuries that take place throughout the season. And I know the reason why you have to be aggressive sometimes because if some of these guys did not get injured, you may have a guy who wins you a fantasy championship. So just be careful how much budget you use. And then hopefully you guys continue to build a strong roster. So for that being said, that's it for today. Please like, comment, and share this podcast. On the next episode on Thursday, I will be going over my week 3 matchups and my start sits for the week. So please don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss that episode. So if you like to follow us on social media, you can find us over on Facebook and Twitter at the Gridiron Pod. And if you want to follow us on Instagram, you can follow us over at Gridiron Fantasy Football. That's it for today. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see y'all guys in the next episode. Take care.